They won't just like you, they will slowly become addicted to you. You walk into a room, and no one really notices you yet, but something shifts, something subtle, something they cannot fully explain. One conversation later, they start paying attention to you differently. Not because you tried harder, but because you triggered something deeper inside. And that difference between attraction and obsession changes everything you experience. Because attraction is temporary, but psychological attachment rewires how people think about you. You are not learning dating tips, you are learning how human behavior truly works. And once you see it, you cannot unsee the patterns behind every interaction. Every reaction, every glance, every pause starts revealing something beneath the surface. What I am about to show you is not common social skills advice. These are psychological triggers most people feel, but never consciously understand themselves. And when used correctly, they create emotional dependency without the other person realizing it. So, before we go deeper, you need to understand one critical difference. Because liking you is easy, but needing you is where real power begins. Well, at first it feels normal, just another casual conversation in a crowded space. But then you notice something strange. They start leaning slightly closer towards you. Their eyes stay longer, their responses feel quicker, almost too emotionally engaged. It is subtle, but your presence begins influencing how they react and behave. Not because you are different, but because you activated something already inside them. And this is where most people completely misunderstand attraction and emotional psychology. They believe attraction comes from looks, status, or confidence displayed on surface. But real obsession comes from psychological triggers that bypass logical thinking entirely. You are not making them like you are altering how they experience you. And once that shift happens, their brain starts associating you with emotional reward. That reward becomes something they unconsciously want to feel again and again, which is why they start thinking about you long after the moment ends. And the more they think, the more your presence grows inside their mind. This is not random. This is a predictable pattern hidden in human behavior. And once you understand this pattern, you begin seeing the invisible system behind attraction. Because what you are about to learn next will change how you read people forever. What you are noticing is not chemistry, it is a psychological structure. Every person you meet carries invisible emotional gaps shaped by past experiences. Some of these gaps are small, others are deep and constantly seeking fulfillment. And when someone unknowingly touches that gap, the reaction becomes significantly stronger. That is why certain interactions feel normal, while others suddenly feel intense. Because intensity is not created, it is triggered from something already inside them. Most people try to impress others, hoping to create attraction from external effort. But real influence comes from activating internal needs they cannot consciously control. You are not adding value, you are unlocking value they are missing within. And once that value is activated, their attention naturally begins orbiting around you. This is the hidden system behind obsession, emotional attachment, and deep attraction. It operates quietly, beneath logic, beneath awareness, shaping behavior without permission, which means the real skill is not what you say, but what you trigger. And before you can control that, you need to recognize when it happens. Because there is always a moment where everything suddenly shifts without warning. And that moment is the signal that changes the entire direction of connection. At first, everything feels balanced, their tone steady, their reactions completely predictable. But then something changes, something small, something most people completely ignore. Their voice shifts slightly, their energy rises, their attention becomes intensely focused. Sometimes they repeat themselves, as if trying to pull a reaction from you. Other times they lean in closer, holding eye contact just a second longer. That moment, right there, is what psychologists call an emotional spike. And that spike is not random, it reveals something sensitive beneath their surface. It means you just touched a psychological nerve they did not expect. Most people miss it, they keep talking, they move on without noticing anything. But if you slow down, you start seeing patterns hidden inside conversation flow. Because human behavior is not flat, it rises and falls like emotional waves. And spikes are peaks where internal needs briefly break through their control. That is your entry point, the exact moment where influence becomes possible. Instead of ignoring it, you follow it. You explore what caused that reaction. Because behind every spike, there is a deeper gap waiting to be understood. And once you understand that gap, you are one step closer to controlling it. One of the most common weak points you will encounter is validation. Everyone enjoys appreciation, but some people depend on it to feel valuable. You notice it when they subtly highlight achievements or repeat impressive moments. They want to be seen, recognized, and quietly confirmed as someone important. And when that need becomes strong, it starts shaping how they behave socially. Most people respond by giving direct compliments, thinking it builds attraction quickly. But direct praise feels cheap, predictable, and fades from memory almost instantly. If you want real impact, you must make them feel value without saying it. So instead of praising directly, you shift the focus toward their perspective. You ask for their opinion, their advice, something they can solve confidently. When they respond, you pause slightly, letting their words carry weight naturally. Then you react with genuine realization, not admiration, but subtle acknowledgement instead. That reaction creates a deeper effect because it feels earned, not given freely. Now their brain connects you with a feeling of being useful and respected. And that feeling becomes something they unconsciously want to experience again with you, which means they start engaging more, seeking moments where that feeling repeats itself. Because once someone feels valuable around you, they begin attaching emotionally without realizing. And what comes next takes that attachment even deeper into something harder to escape. Another powerful weak point appears when someone carries a goal they deeply care about. On the surface, they sound confident, driven, and focused on achieving something meaningful. But underneath that ambition, there is always a quiet fear of failing. You hear it in their tone, slight hesitation, subtle doubt hiding behind strong words. Most people respond by giving advice, trying to fix the situation logically. But that approach disconnects because the real problem is not logic, it is emotion. What they truly need is not solutions, but a sense of emotional reassurance. So instead of correcting them, you let them fully express what they feel inside. You listen without interrupting, without judging, allowing their uncertainty to surface naturally. And when they finish, you do not give advice, you give them possibility instead. You introduce a story, someone who felt the same fear and still succeeded. It does not need to be perfect, it only needs to feel real enough. Because stories bypass resistance and directly influence how the brain processes fear. Now their mind shifts from doubt toward hope, from pressure toward possibility. And the person who creates that emotional shift becomes deeply associated with relief. Relief is powerful because it removes internal tension they could not handle alone, which makes them come back not for answers, but for how you make them feel. And once someone connects you with emotional safety, attachment begins forming quietly. But the next weak point goes even deeper, touching something far more personal inside. There is another layer, deeper than fear, something shaped by past emotional pain. You notice it when they talk about rejection, disappointment, or moments they felt inadequate. Their words may sound calm, but their tone carries something unresolved beneath it. Because when someone experiences rejection, it rarely ends with that single moment. It becomes a question they keep asking themselves again and again internally. Was I not enough? Did I fail? Is there something wrong with me? That internal loop quietly damages how they see themselves over time. Most people try to fix this by giving direct reassurance or empty encouragement. But direct reassurance feels artificial, and the mind resists what feels forced. So instead, you shift the narrative without confronting their belief directly. You introduce new context, information that reframes how the situation is perceived. You mention patterns, how others experience the same outcome under similar conditions. Now the focus slowly moves away from them toward external factors beyond control. And that subtle shift begins dissolving the weight of personal blame inside them. Because the pain was never just the rejection, it was the meaning attached. When you change the meaning, you weaken the emotional impact tied to it, and the person who helps remove that weight becomes incredibly significant over time. Because reducing pain creates a stronger bond than simply adding positive emotion, which means their mind starts associating you with relief, clarity, and emotional reset. And once that association forms, the connection moves beyond simple attraction entirely. But what happens next taps into something even more instinctive and difficult to resist. Now, everything shifts into something more instinctive, something people rarely control consciously. Desire is not just about attraction, it is about what feels just out of reach. You notice it when interest increases the moment availability becomes slightly uncertain, because the brain values what it cannot fully predict or consistently access. Most people make themselves too available, thinking consistency builds stronger connection over time. But constant availability removes tension, and without tension, desire slowly disappears. So instead, you begin controlling the rhythm of interaction in subtle ways. You give attention, then you step back, allowing space to naturally form. You respond, then delay slightly, creating moments where anticipation begins building internally. This pattern confuses the brain, but in that confusion, attachment starts forming. Because uncertainty forces the mind to keep thinking, trying to understand what changed. And the more they think, the more emotionally invested they become without noticing. You are not pulling away completely, you are creating controlled emotional distance, enough to keep interest alive, but never enough to break the connection entirely. This balance creates a loop where they keep coming back for emotional clarity. And each time they return, their investment becomes deeper and harder to reverse. Because what they are chasing is not you, it is the feeling you create. And once someone starts chasing a feeling, they rarely stop on their own, which means at this point, the connection is no longer under their control. But the real mechanism behind this goes even deeper than simple interaction patterns. What you are seeing is not separate techniques, it is one unified system. Each weak point connects, forming a loop that reinforces emotional dependency over time. Validation makes them feel valuable. Reassurance makes them feel safe and understood. Reframing pain removes internal weight, desire creates tension they cannot resolve easily. When combined, these elements create a cycle the brain begins repeating automatically. They feel good, then the feeling fades, and they start craving it again. That craving is not conscious, it happens beneath awareness in emotional processing. And without realizing it, they begin associating that feeling directly with you, which means they are not chasing you, they are chasing how you make them feel. This is how emotional attachment forms, not through logic, but repeated internal reward. The brain starts linking your presence with relief, excitement, and psychological comfort. And the more those states repeat, the stronger that association becomes over time. At a certain point, interaction is no longer optional. It becomes something they seek. Not because they decide to, but because their mind is conditioned toward it. This is what makes the process feel addictive, even when nothing obvious is happening. And once someone enters this loop, breaking it becomes much harder than entering. But here is the part most people never stop to question carefully. Think about it for a second and be completely honest with yourself. There was probably someone you could not stop thinking about at some point. You checked your phone, waited for replies, replayed conversations in your head. It did not feel logical, but it felt real, almost impossible to control. And at the time, you believed it was just strong attraction or chemistry. But now you start seeing it differently. Something else was happening underneath. Maybe they gave attention, then pulled away, creating emotional uncertainty inside you. Maybe they made you feel understood, then left you wanting that feeling again. Maybe they triggered something deeper, something you did not even recognize yourself. And the truth is, it was not random. It followed the same pattern. The same system you are learning right now was already being used on you, which means the difference between control and being controlled is awareness. And once you see that clearly, you cannot go back to not noticing it. From this moment forward, every interaction you experience will start feeling different. You will notice pauses, reactions, and emotional shifts that once seemed invisible. You will begin recognizing patterns behind attention, attraction, and subtle behavioral changes. And once you see those patterns, they stop being random. They become predictable. That awareness gives you an advantage most people will never even realize exists. Because while others react emotionally, you start understanding what drives those reactions. And understanding always comes before influence, whether people realize it or not. But here is the part that stays with you long after this video ends. The more aware you become, the harder it is to experience things the same way. Because every feeling, every connection, every attachment starts revealing hidden layers. And once you start seeing those layers, you cannot go back to not S.